The laughter, not the polite kind you hear at a party or the canned variety from a sitcom, but the pure, unrestrained kind that bubbles up from a place of simple, uncomplicated joy, filled the air around Denise Walker. It was a sound so precious, it didn't even know its own worth yet. Denise sat on an old plaid blanket at Nash Square Park in Raleigh, absently brushing cracker crumbs off her jeans while her daughter, Lily, a whirlwind of 6-year-old wonder, tried to feed what was left of her sandwich to a brazen squirrel. The squirrel wasn't shy. It darted up, snagged the crust with an audacious flick of its tiny paws, and shot off again like it had just pulled off the heist of the century. "Mom, he really took it." Lily squealed, her bright blonde hair falling in wisps around her grass-stained cheeks as she giggled harder. Denise grinned, tossing her head back with a soft chuckle. "Well, baby, you offered it to him. He just has good taste." The truth of Lily's joy was undeniable. Though no one would guess it from the outside, Lily was Denise's daughter through and through. From the way she scrunched her nose when she was deep in thought, to the way she'd instinctively reach for Denise's hand every time a dog barked too close, their connection was a palpable, unspoken language. They were a pair, a perfectly woven tapestry of shared moments. They'd spent the morning drawing sidewalk chalk animals near the fountain, their creations blooming in vibrant hues on the grey concrete. Then, they shared turkey sandwiches and crisp apple slices under the wide, ancient trees, the leaves whispering secrets overhead. It had been a good day, one of the good ones, the kind Denise tried to memorize, to etch into her very being as they unfolded. "All right, come on, kiddo," Denise said, starting to fold up the blanket, breaking the spell of their idyllic afternoon. "Time to head home and get cleaned up before dinner." "Can I carry the basket?" Lily asked, her eyes wide and earnest. Denise handed her the lightweight woven tote, ruffling her hair affectionately. "You got it, helper." They took the long way back, strolling through the quiet neighborhood, past rows of neatly trimmed lawns and driveways adorned with basketball hoops and front porch flags. A warm breeze, carrying the scent of blooming azaleas, fluttered through the branches overhead. The sun was dipping just low enough to make everything golden, bathing the world in a soft, ethereal glow. They looked like any mother and daughter heading home from the park, a picture of domestic bliss. But Denise had learned a long time ago, through countless subtle cues and unspoken judgments, that what things look like doesn't always match what people choose to see. As they strolled past the corner house with the big camellia bush out front, Lily skipped ahead a few steps, turning to walk backward like she was on stage, performing for an unseen audience. "I'm going to ask Miss Carmen if I can play with Riley tomorrow." "Only after you clean your room," Denise replied with a playful wink. "I will. I promise. Cross my heart and all that." We'll see." They were still laughing, their carefree voices echoing softly in the late afternoon air, when they passed a small white house with blue shutters and a wreath on the door that hadn't been changed since Easter. Denise noticed movement from the corner of her eye. Someone standing behind the living room window, barely visible behind the curtain. Watching. She didn't think anything of it at first. People look. That's just life, especially in neighborhoods where residents feel like they own the street, not just their property, simply because their name's on the mailbox. But this particular set of eyes followed them a little longer than usual. The curtain shifted, and the woman, Susan Whitmore, stepped out onto her porch, her face blank at first, then squinted slightly, a subtle tightening around her eyes. Denise kept walking, her stride even, her voice calm for Lily's sake. But she could feel it, though. That stare. That weight. It's something you learn to pick up on when you've had to carry it your whole life. It sticks to your skin, a phantom sensation, even when you try to shake it off. Still, she kept her voice calm, her body loose. Lily, thankfully, didn't notice a thing. They rounded the corner, just 1 block from home. But behind them, Susan Whitmore was already dialing 911. "There's a little girl with a woman who doesn't look like her," Susan said, her voice unnervingly calm, controlled. "She seems nervous." No, I don't know them personally. But something just feels off." Denise didn't know it yet, but her peaceful day at the park was about to become a headline, a public spectacle she never asked for. Something was coming fast, and it wasn't just sirens. Susan Whitmore stood on her front porch like it was a guard post, one hand on her hip, the other clutching her phone a little too tight. Her tone wasn't frantic. It wasn't even loud. It was calm, controlled, and that's what made it worse. Yes, she reiterated to the dispatcher, her voice a thin wire of self-righteousness. It's a little girl, maybe 5 or 6. She's white. A subtle pause. And the woman walking with her? Well, she's not. There was another beat of silence as the dispatcher asked a question. I'm not sure what she's wearing. Jeans, I think. Look, she was walking kind of fast. It just felt off. I didn't want to assume anything, but what if it's serious? She used words like just being cautious and God forbid something's actually wrong, but in her mind, the verdict was already delivered. Susan didn't know Denise. She'd only seen her a few times, usually from a distance, fleeting glimpses that confirmed her preconceived notions. In Susan's mind, people like Denise didn't belong in homes like theirs, walking down clean streets with little girls who didn't match. This wasn't about safety, not really. It was about order, about Susan's own narrow definition of normalcy. Inside her living room, the TV played a commercial on low volume, something about car insurance. A mug of herbal tea sat half-drunk on the table next to a copy of Better Homes and Gardens. Outside, the spring breeze made the wind chimes on the porch tinkle softly, a deceptive melody against the brewing storm. Susan gave the dispatcher the intersection where she'd last seen them, then waited, a knot of satisfaction beginning to tighten in her chest. Less than 5 minutes later, Denise and Lily were at the corner of Evergreen and Baywood. Just one more street, and they'd be home. Lily had started humming something under her breath, some cheerful tune from a cartoon Denise couldn't quite place, her little legs swinging with each step like she was dancing. That's when the police cruiser turned the corner. Then another. Both cars pulled up and stopped just ahead of them, blocking the sidewalk like someone had drawn a stark, impassable line across the road that said, "You don't get to pass yet." Denise's heart thudded. Not panic, not fear, not yet. Just a cold, immediate awareness. She reached down and gently took Lily's hand. "Stay close, okay?" she whispered, her voice a calm anchor in the suddenly heavy air. 2 officers stepped out, one male, one female. Both looked serious but not aggressive. "Not yet." The male officer called, his voice professional, clipped. "Can we speak with you for a second?" Denise didn't flinch. She didn't step forward either. She kept her voice even, controlled. "Sure. What's going on?" "We got a call. Someone reported a possible child abduction in the area." He glanced at Lily, then back at Denise, his gaze lingering on the stark contrast between their skin tones. Lily looked up at her mom, confused. "What does that mean?" Denise crouched down beside her. "It's okay, baby. Just hold my hand." "All right." Then she stood up, reached into her tote bag calmly, without haste, and pulled out a thin, worn folder. She'd kept it with her ever since Lily's adoption was finalized, a silent testament to a truth she knew she might always have to justify. She knew. She knew how people could be. She handed it to the officer. "My name is Denise Walker. This is my daughter, Lily Walker. She's adopted. All the paperwork is in there, including my ID and her birth certificate." The officer opened the folder, his fingers flipping through the documents, cross-checking names and addresses. The address matched the one on the report. The documents were real. Everything was in order. The silence stretched long, thick with unspoken implications. Lily squeezed her mom's hand tighter, her small fingers clutching desperately. The female officer leaned slightly toward her partner. "This doesn't feel like a real threat," she said quietly, but not quietly enough that Denise didn't catch it. Still, the male officer finished his check. He looked up, his expression a mix of relief and mild embarrassment. "I appreciate your cooperation. Sorry for the inconvenience." Inconvenience. Denise let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Not relief, not yet. She looked directly at him, her gaze unwavering. "Do I get to know who made the call?" He glanced away, a practiced move. "We're not allowed to give that information out." Denise nodded slowly. "Of course." Lily tugged at her mom's arm. "Can we go home now?" Denise crouched down and kissed the top of her head. Yeah, baby. We're going. They turned to leave. Denise walked slower now, the weight of the moment heavier than the basket in her hand. She could feel eyes on her. Not the officers anymore. Somewhere else. Back at Susan's house, the curtain twitched. But Susan wasn't behind it anymore. She was pacing her kitchen, watching the scene on her Ring camera, hands shaking. Not with fear, but something more complicated. Recognition, a distant, jarring memory, and a truth she thought she'd buried forever. But the footage from that camera wasn't staying buried. And neither was the past. 3. The viral video and Susan's buried past. The next morning, Denise sat at her kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The sun poured in through the window, but it offered no warmth. Not after what had happened. Lily was still asleep upstairs. Last night, Denise had tried to soothe her daughter, telling her that sometimes people just got confused and asked silly questions, that it wasn't Lily's fault, that everything was okay. But everything didn't feel okay. Denise stared at the wall for a long time before pulling out her phone. She wasn't big on social media, but her neighbor across the street, Monique, had texted her earlier. Girl, check next door. Someone posted the footage. You're in it. Denise hesitated, then tapped the app. A few seconds later, there it was. The headline was casual, something like suspicious incident on Evergreen yesterday afternoon. But the video wasn't casual at all. It was clear, Denise and Lily walking peacefully, the police pulling up, Lily's confusion, Denise calmly handing over her folder. All of it caught from Susan's porch camera. There was no audio, but the visuals said enough. There were already over 200 comments. Some were supportive. I saw her at the park all the time with that little girl. That's her mom. I hate that she even had to carry around proof like that. But others weren't. Maybe she's telling the truth, but it's still better to be safe than sorry. Something about that whole thing just felt off. Sorry, not sorry. Denise set the phone down. Her hands were shaking. Across the street, Monique came over without knocking. She never knocked, she just barged in, like sisters do. You okay? She asked, already pouring herself coffee. I saw the whole thing. You handled it like a pro. Denise sighed. Yeah, well, I shouldn't have to be a pro at this. Monique sat down, lowering her voice. You know who called, right? Denise just looked at her. Susan from the corner. Her doorbell camera caught the whole thing, which means she saw it, called the cops, and recorded it. She posted the clip herself. That stopped Denise cold. She what? Yep. And get this, someone commented under the video asking her why she felt the need to post it, and she deleted the question. Denise shook her head slowly. What is wrong with people? Monique paused, squinting at her coffee like it might offer wisdom. You want to say something? Speak out. You should. People need to see this. I'm tired of being the example, Denise said quietly, the words laced with profound weariness. I just want to be her mom. That silence hung heavy between them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the neighborhood, Susan sat on her couch with her laptop open. She hadn't meant for the video to get that much attention. At least, that's what she told herself. She hadn't expected the backlash. She definitely hadn't expected someone from the local paper to email her asking for a statement. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't type anything. She hadn't told anyone, not even her husband, what she had recognized yesterday. She had told herself it was instinct, a protective reflex. But it was more than that. That little girl, Lily. The moment Susan had seen her up close, something had clicked. A face from a photo years ago. A memory that came back too fast and too hard. She got up and went to her closet, pulled down a dusty box from the top shelf. Inside were old letters, some faded newspaper clippings, and a single, small photo of a young woman holding a baby. She knew it. She knew who Lily was, or at least, who her biological mother had been. Susan sat back down, staring at the photo. Her sister, Kendra, smiling on the hospital bed, the baby cradled in her arms. That baby had been adopted after Kendra's overdose. Susan had never forgiven herself for not stepping in, not trying harder. She told herself she had no legal rights, no power, no standing, that the system had made the decision for her. But now, the past had walked right up her street, holding hands with a woman she didn't know. And instead of knocking on the door and introducing herself, she called the cops. But the truth was already spreading. And this time, it wasn't hers to control. It didn't take long before the story outgrew the neighborhood. By Tuesday morning, the video had hit Twitter, then Facebook, then Reddit. A popular page that highlights racial profiling incidents picked it up, reposted it with a sharp caption: "She had adoption papers in her bag just to walk with her daughter." Let that sink in. Within hours, it had over 300,000 views. People were angry, but not just about the call, about the assumption, about the pattern, about how normal this had become. Denise's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She got messages from strangers, journalists, old college classmates she hadn't heard from in years. Her job called and told her to take the rest of the week off if she needed it. Even the school principal sent a message: "Saw the video. I just want you to know that we support you and Lily. If there's anything we can do, let us know." Denise sat in her car outside the grocery store, watching the video again. Watching herself stay calm. Watching Lily fidget beside her, holding her arm like it was a rope that could save her from something unseen. That wasn't parenting. That was survival. She didn't cry. She'd already gone through that stage years ago, when the adoption process made her justify her motherhood in 10,000 different ways. But she felt something hard settling inside her. Not bitterness, not anger. Something colder, tighter, like part of her had just shut the lights off. That evening, a local TV crew reached out. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. Back on Evergreen Street, Susan Whitmore sat on her front porch watching as neighbors drove past slower than usual. No one waved. Someone had left a sticky note on her mailbox earlier. No signature. It just said, "You owe them an apology." Susan's husband, Mark, didn't say much. He knew something deeper was going on, but Susan hadn't told him everything. She didn't explain the photo, the box in the closet, the connection. She just kept staring at the video, over and over, watching herself pace in the background, watching the police arrive, watching Lily clutch the folder Denise handed over. It was like watching herself from the outside, like someone else had made the call. But she knew better. The memory of her sister's funeral came back suddenly. That tiny white casket, the sealed court documents, the social worker telling her the child had been placed with a family who was ready, stable, capable, words that cut deep. She had never even learned the adoptive mother's name until now. Susan got up from the porch and walked back into the house. She opened her email, stared at the blinking cursor on a message she'd started to write 3 times and deleted. To Denise Walker. Subject: "I think we need to talk." Still, she didn't hit send. Across the street, Denise was in the living room, reading a book while Lily colored at the coffee table. Her daughter was humming again, that same tune from the other day. It was off-key and cheerful, and Denise couldn't stop looking at her. Couldn't stop wondering, what if I hadn't had those papers? What if I'd raised my voice? What if the officer had been someone else? The questions rolled in like waves. She picked up her phone, opened her notes app, and started typing out what she'd say if she decided to go public. If she decided to speak, not just for herself, but for every parent who'd ever had to prove their love because someone else couldn't wrap their head around it. The words came slow, but they came. Honest, simple, clear. But the next knock on her door wouldn't be from the press. It would be from someone she never expected to see in person. The knock on Denise's door was soft, almost polite, like whoever was on the other side wasn't quite sure they had the right house. Denise opened the door halfway, expecting a reporter, or maybe a curious neighbor emboldened by the viral video. What she saw instead was Susan Whitmore, alone, clutching a manila envelope like it was a shield. They stood there for a second, both unsure who should speak first, the humid Raleigh air thick with unspoken tension. "Hi," Susan said, her voice quieter than Denise had ever heard it, fragile and uncertain. I'm the one who called the police. I think you already knew that." Denise said nothing. Her face remained unreadable, a carefully constructed mask. "Not at first," she replied, her voice flat, devoid of the emotion churning within her. Susan looked down, her gaze fixed on the envelope in her hands. I came to apologize. Not to defend myself. Just to tell you I was wrong. Denise didn't open the door wider, but she didn't close it either. The narrow gap remained, a physical representation of the distance between them. Is that all you came to say? Susan hesitated, then held out the envelope, her hand trembling slightly. There's something I need to explain. Something about Lily. That stopped everything. Denise's face didn't change, but her hand reached out slowly, a deliberate, almost cautious movement, and took the envelope. She opened it. Inside was an old photo, grainy but clear, a young woman in a hospital gown, looking tired but proud, holding a newborn baby. That's my sister, Susan said, her voice a strained whisper. Her name was Kendra. Denise glanced up from the photo, her eyes meeting Susan's. The connection clicked into place with a chilling clarity. She was Lily's birth mother, Denise stated, the words not a question, but a profound realization. The silence in that moment wasn't awkward. It was electric, charged with revelation. She passed away 6 years ago. Overdose, Susan continued, her voice breaking slightly. I wasn't allowed to take the baby. They said I didn't meet the requirements. I didn't fight it the way I should have. And when they told me she'd been adopted, I just let it go. I didn't even try to find out where she went. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together. But when I saw her yesterday, your daughter, I knew. I recognized her face. And I panicked. Not because I thought you were dangerous. I just... She shook her head, a desperate, lost gesture. I don't know. It was selfish. I made it about me. And I hurt both of you. Denise held the photo in her hand for a long time, studying the face of the young woman in it, who looked barely 20. She had never seen Lily's biological mother before. And now this stranger, this woman who had publicly humiliated her in front of her child, was standing in her doorway claiming to be family, revealing a shared, tragic past. She looks like Lily, Denise said, not meaning to say it out loud, the observation escaping her lips on a breath of surprise. I know, Susan replied, her voice raw. Denise finally stepped aside, opening the door fully. Come in. They sat at the kitchen table, the unspoken history heavy between them. Denise didn't offer coffee. She just listened. Susan told her everything, about her sister's spiraling addiction, about the harrowing custody battle, about the social worker who had told her the baby had been placed with a good family, ready, stable, capable, words that had cut Susan deeply at the time, words she had tried to forget. I thought I'd be okay just not knowing, Susan confessed, her voice barely a murmur. But when I saw her, all that came rushing back. And calling the cops was your first instinct? Denise asked, her voice calm, but with an underlying sharpness. Susan looked away, her gaze unfocused. I think I was jealous. Or scared. Or maybe just ashamed. I don't know what's worse. Denise studied her, her eyes sharp but steady, seeking honesty beyond the regret. You didn't recognize me. You recognized her, and you still assumed the worst. Susan nodded, a slow, painful acknowledgement. I did. There was a long pause, filled with the hum of the refrigerator. You could have knocked, Denise said, her voice low. You could have said something. I know, Susan whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Denise took a breath, the weight of a decade of unspoken truths settling between them. You don't get to have her back. Whatever connection you had to her before, she's mine now. I'm her mother. I'm not trying to take her, Susan said quickly, desperation in her voice. I just wanted to tell the truth. Denise looked at her, her eyes unwavering. Then tell it where it counts. You made this public. Make the apology just as loud. Susan swallowed hard, her gaze dropping. Okay. And if Lily asks about you, about her birth family, I'll tell her what's appropriate, Denise continued, her voice firm. But I won't let her get dragged into any more drama. This is her life, not a headline. I understand, Susan said, and for once, Denise believed her. She stood up slowly. Thank you for letting me say it. And I'm sorry for all of it. Denise didn't reply right away. She walked Susan to the door. "You don't get points for showing up late," she said, her voice without warmth, but also without anger. "But at least you showed up." Susan gave a small nod, then turned and walked down the steps, the envelope now empty, her guilt a little lighter. But Denise knew this wasn't the end, because the story had already taken on a life of its own. And now, the world was watching. By Friday morning, Denise's name was in the headlines, splashed across local news sites and social media feeds. Mother accused of kidnapping her own child speaks out, caught on camera, racial bias or honest mistake. Adoptive mom confronts caller in viral police video. She hadn't planned to talk to anyone, but when a local news anchor reached out and asked if Denise wanted to say something in her own words, she agreed. Not for the clicks, not for the comments, but for Lily. The interview was filmed in her backyard, the setting as understated as Denise herself. No microphones clipped to her shirt, just a camera on a tripod and a woman named Shelby who let Denise talk without interrupting. "I didn't want to do this," Denise said to the lens, her voice steady, resonant with a quiet power. "I just wanted to be her mom." But when people think they can decide who belongs based on what they see, or what they think they see, someone has to say something. She paused, glancing toward the house where Lily was inside with Monique, playing Uno. "People ask me why I carry adoption papers everywhere I go. Why I feel the need to be prepared. It's because of moments like that. Because people see us walking down the street and think it doesn't add up." She looked directly at the camera, her gaze unwavering. "My daughter is not a puzzle piece that has to fit your picture of what a family looks like. She's my child. That's all that should matter." The clip aired that evening, and by the next morning, Denise's phone was full again. But this time, it was different. Strangers sent messages of support. Parents of adopted kids, transracial families, teachers, social workers, all expressing gratitude. "Thank you for speaking," read one message. "You said what so many of us are scared to say." Across the street, Susan watched the interview twice, then once more with the volume up. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just sat there, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Quiet accountability. The next day, Susan made her post. No excuses, no disclaimers, just a simple caption. "I was the one who made the call. I assumed something awful, and I was wrong. That's mine to own. To Denise and Lily, I'm sorry. I hope others learn from my mistake." It didn't go viral, but it didn't need to. People saw it. Her neighbors saw it. The same ones who'd kept walking past her house with side eyes and silence. The apology didn't fix everything. It didn't erase what happened. But it mattered. At school on Monday, Lily came home with a drawing she made in class. Stick figures, one tall, one small, both smiling, standing under a sun with squiggly rays. On the back, she'd written, "Me and Mom walking home." Denise stuck it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pineapple. "I like how I look in this," she said, ruffling Lily's hair. "You look like a superhero," Lily said proudly. Denise smiled. "That's exactly what I was going for." She turned back to the fridge, her eyes resting on the picture. For the first time in days, her shoulders dropped a bit, the tension slowly bleeding out of her. But outside that front door, the world still had a lot to learn. A week after the video went viral, the neighborhood felt different. People who used to walk past Denise with polite nods started stopping to say hello. A couple of parents from Lily's school dropped off handwritten cards. One even left a bouquet of sunflowers with a note that said, "We see you. We're sorry." Denise didn't need the flowers, but she appreciated the effort. Still, she wasn't looking for validation. She just wanted space to live. To walk down the street with her child without becoming someone's suspicion. To shop for cereal without someone squinting at her, trying to solve a math problem that wasn't theirs to do. One evening, she and Lily were back at Nash Square Park. Same old picnic blanket. Same park bench nearby. Same squirrel making rounds, looking for handouts. Lily tossed a peanut toward the tree and looked up at her mom. "Is that the same squirrel from last time?" "Pretty sure it is," Denise said, stretching her legs out. Lily was quiet for a second. Then she asked the question Denise had been expecting. Why did the police come that day? Denise looked at her daughter. Not a baby anymore, not completely, but old enough to start noticing when the world treated them differently. She reached over, smoothed Lily's hair back from her face. Because someone didn't understand who we are, and instead of asking questions or saying hello, they made a choice that scared us both. Lily frowned. That was mean. Yeah, Denise said. But some people don't mean to be mean. They just don't know better yet. Will they learn? I hope so. But what matters most is that you know who you are and who I am, and that we're a team, always. Lily leaned against her mom's shoulder. We're a good team. Denise kissed the top of her head. The best. Across the street from the park, Susan Whitmore stood by the curb. She had come alone, without fanfare, without an invitation. She watched them from a distance for a few moments, then started walking over, slow, cautious. Denise saw her. She didn't stand up, didn't wave, but she didn't turn away either. Susan approached, stopping a few feet from the blanket. I'm not here to bother you, she said, her voice soft. I just wanted to say something to her, if that's all right. Denise looked down at Lily. You remember Miss Susan from the neighborhood? Lily nodded. Susan crouched slightly, keeping her voice gentle. I made a mistake. A really big one. I thought something bad when there was nothing bad at all, and I hurt your mom. I'm sorry. Lily looked at her for a second, then turned to Denise. Denise gave a small nod. It's okay to say thank you. That's all you have to do. Thank you, Lily said politely. Susan stood up. You're doing a great job, she said to Denise. I mean that. Denise nodded once. Goodbye, Susan. It wasn't warm, but it was something. Susan walked away, the guilt a little lighter, but the lessons ingrained. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Denise sat alone on the couch with her laptop. She opened a blank document. At the top, she typed, what it means to be a mother when the world tries to doubt you. Then she kept writing, slowly, honestly. Because maybe, just maybe, her voice could help another mom like her. One who keeps adoption papers in her bag, not out of fear, but preparation. One who knows the ache of being questioned while simply loving out loud. Sometimes love isn't quiet. Sometimes love has to speak up. And if this story makes you stop before you make an assumption, if it makes you pause, ask, what if I'm wrong? Then maybe that's how things start to change. If you believe families don't have to match to be real, speak up. Say something. Because silence has never raised a child, but love has.